This is another rounded reading video. This reading is a selection from JRR Tolkien's The Fellowship of the Ring. This is actually a specific portion of a conversation. Alright, it's page 92 in this version, second chapter, The Shadow of the Past. The Shire, he may be seeking for it now, if he has not already found out where it lies. Indeed, Frodo, I fear that he may even think that the long unnoticed name of Baggins has become important. This is terrible, cried Frodo. Far worse than the worst that I had imagined from your hints and warnings. Oh, Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance. Pity. It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. I'm sorry, said Frodo, but I am frightened, and I do not feel any pity for Gollum. You have not seen him, Gandalf broke in. No, and I do not want to, said Frodo. I cannot understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live after all those horrible deeds? Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc, just an enemy. He deserves death. Deserves it? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. For even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up with the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part yet to play, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not the least. And that is the whole portion I want to read. This is in the initial part of the book where it's after Gandalf has returned from abroad and Frodo has had ownership of the ring for some time, but he doesn't have any understanding of the gravity of the situation. Actually, Frodo had ownership of the ring for 9 years while Gandalf was trying to figure out which ring it was for sure. So much of these books are, they're obviously all fiction, but the thing is, in their fiction, it frees them up to be completely true. And there's so many dualities between the characters. There's so many pairings, and when you read these characters, the kicker to it is you're all of them. That's really how I think it should be read. You're all of them. As much as Tolkien is all of them, you can think about it that way, and there is so much of the self trying to figure out the self in these books, if you care to think about it. So most of the characters are mirrored. So you have Frodo and Sam, who are these two parts of the hero, and they're very similar to Luke Skywalker in the way that they came from the simple world and they got to go out. They're called, but the difference is Frodo is displaced from a family. He's an orphan. He's taken in by his uncle. So Frodo doesn't have anything, whereas Sam has his grandparents, and he has Rosie Cotton, who he has to leave. And so there's both of them sacrificing in a different way. Frodo doesn't want to be responsible for the fate of the world. And Sam, because of his engagement, he already is responsible, but his world is the Shire, and he has to give up his responsibility for loyalty. And I really think in some ways Sam is the real hero, because it's not as much of a sacrifice for someone who has nothing. Um, Not to like disregard Frodo, but there is something to that is a higher peril. And then, so you have Sam and Frodo, and you have the person who is wealthy and the person who is not wealthy, and you have the person who is wealthy in family and the person who has no one in family. So there's a lot of duality between those two characters. And then you have Merry and Pippin, who are both these embodiments of mirth and zeal. I mean, literally named Merry and Pippin, like their youth. And they go out into this world like so brazen and free. And then throughout the books, at different times without each other, they end up giving their freedom away because they both declare fealty to lords, because that's how you save the world. Like it's really, it's strange and wonderful. And then you have the duality, of course, between Gandalf and Sauron. They're both trying to do the same thing, and one chooses the power, and then one chooses to enable others. And Gandalf is a really hard character to understand. The wise old man who has to die. But so much of what Gandalf says, that's why I chose to read this selection. So much of what Gandalf says is stuff that you could just think about for forever. And then you have probably the most interesting to me, the duality between Aragorn and Boromir. And they're both so worthy. That's the killer. They're both so worthy. In some ways, I almost view Boromir as, and before he becomes corrupted by getting too close to the ring, you can really get his grievances. Because he has been in this kingdom that is being whelmed already by the shadow and dealing with Mordor, and they've lost land to Mordor, and he has a father who he doesn't understand the plight of his mind because he doesn't know his father's been corrupted by, oh, I should know the name of those orbs, but I can't think of it right now. So Boromir has this burden of his family's responsibility, and he's already taken on that mantle. And then there is Aragorn and the Rangers, who are the royalty, and they've been wandering in the wilderness. And Aragorn is from that Longjevid line that's part Elven, so he's been wandering the wilderness for 80 years. And they have been getting something done. They've been taking care of the Shire and stuff. But on the other hand, it's like, damn, you'd think in 80 years you would have visited your city. And maybe there was a visit, but, you know, there just hasn't been that taking responsibility of the king. And it's a problem. And it's something that I didn't understand when I was younger. When I was younger and I read the books, I didn't see any fault on behalf of the Rangers or Aragorn. And then when I got older, I really see why Boromir's family has such a gripe. You know, they don't know if they should have a king. They don't think they need one, which is kind of like understandable if you've been sitting on the throne of a place. So anyway, there's a duality between Boromir and Aragorn, and it's funny because it's very similar to the duality between Gandalf and Sauron. It's just more physical, because Boromir thinks that power should be grabbed. And that's Sauron too. They think power should be grabbed. And in some ways it has to be, but that dark part of power that's the force. If you do it, you give up too much of yourself or something like that. That's I mean, the lesson in the Lord of the Rings is almost ineffable. It's the reason it has to be in this really elaborate, fancy, fluffy story about elves and dwarves and kingdoms of old is because it's such a deep story. And you have to think about when it was written, and who Tolkien was. And I should pull up the dates and have that out when I'm trying to talk about this, because I'm really tragic with dates and I kind of know, but if I start trying to talk about it, I'll say it all wrong. But when you start putting the context of some of these fictions in their timeline, it enriches them. Just it just enriches them, and so it's really valuable to do. It's also valuable to know that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis knew each other. It's valuable to know, like, they're both English. I would say it's valuable to have been to England and to see a British pub. I wish I would have got to see their pub. That's too bad. Maybe someday I'll get back. But this is why I like books, and I think about these things, and this is part of what inspires my art, is trying to find these crystal clean moments that explain how we are, who we are. And I think the image of a scared little hobbit having to have the greater world and pity and grace and power explained is a really good image. And there are so many from those books, but I was thinking, partially because this is spring 2020, talking about how to grapple with the thing we fear. And I've seen a lot of anger at people not doing what certain people think is directed. And yeah, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. But the wise can't see all ends, and so it's good. It's good to have pity and be kind. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this content, and I hope you have a great day.